Cat, 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 check. We got a cat for you. Here is an Ableton walkthrough too. All right. Hi, my name is Cat. This is Red Means Recording. Jeremy has really bad allergies right now, so we're going to be doing this for him, an Ableton walkthrough of what he did to his new OP-1 track called Settle Down. That's what he tells the dog when the dog goes after me, and he doesn't realize that I'm the one that's going after the dog. In case you haven't watched one of these videos before, what we do is we go through what Jeremy did to the cat burp. We go through what Jeremy did to the track after it was recorded in the OP-1 to make it a finalized track. And in this case, a lot of that was about vocals and bass and mixing. So let's start with the vocals. Jeremy recorded some vocals here. They're not actually scratch vocals.
I used to want to feel the whole world.
And then he used Waves Tune to tune them because he's not a very good singer.
Take off the lid and let it all fall.
He then froze that track. And when you've frozen a track in Ableton, that means that all the effects are sort of baked into it. So you can like go up here and hit copy, and then you can paste it down here. So those are those frozen vocals. And that's what he did with all of these right here. So here is the main vocal track, which he actually dropped another tuning plugin on. I can show you here. Waves Tune is a plugin that analyzes the incoming signal.
I used to want to feel the whole world.
And applies notes to it. And then you can manipulate these notes.
I used to want to feel the whole world.
Wonderful. So because Jeremy can't sing that well, he double-tuned his vocals. Nectar here is doing a little format shift. This is what it sounds like without.
I used to want to feel the whole world.
Format shifts change sort of the tonal quality and can make things sound like they're coming from a slightly different gender or something like that. And in this case, that's what Jeremy wanted to do. He wanted to make this sound a little otherworldly. A lot of house stuff has vocals that have been heavily processed, so that's kind of what he did here.
I used to want to feel the whole world.
And then we have the usual litany of plugins that you process vocals with, including gates, EQs, de-essers, and compressors. There are 3 vocal channels, all using the same vocals. In this one, Harmony Engine is doing some doubling.
It's so much work to keep this going.
And they make a really nice team together. Over here, close, over here, we have Vocal Synth doing another round of processing. This is during the chorus where he wanted a little difference. So we got this sort of distorted, format shifted thing going on here. You can hear there's a lot of delay on that, but listen to what happens when we bring in both.
Stop. You're moving too fast.
When we bring in both vocals, the compressor that's working on this grouped channel here starts going really fun. Look at all that compression. So we just wanted to gel all these together. And what you're hearing is a ducked delay. Duck, 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 duck. Where's the duck? Ducking. So we use this again in another channel where basically the delay only comes in after a certain threshold of incoming signal is met. So in this case, it comes in when the main vocal goes away, so it's not stepping on the main vocal. And then we did some automation, including overall gain during the chorus to bring things up, and we also have increased the dry-wet of the delay during the chorus section. I think an interesting thing to keep in mind here is how much processing in terms of echo it sounds like there is here. And then when we go into the main mix, it's very subtle. So it's just weird how vocals can mess with your head a little bit, or effects can mess with your head, and the decisions that you have to make surrounding if you can hear something or not. Like, how big a gesture do you want this thing to be? And Jeremy actually struggles with that quite a bit still. This channel here is just a bunch of risers and falls and little effects. The only somewhat interesting thing here, or cringy, depending on how you feel about life, is he in the pre-chorus here, in this little rise before the pre-chorus. added a little gun sound to go with the static sound in the pads just because it seemed like a good idea, and you know, sometimes you have to listen to your bad ideas. It just is. Drums are next. So in the OP-1 track, these are our main drums, and they are not this wide in the OP-1 track. There they are. Big, kind of thumpy, loose drums. But in the main mix, we wanted to give the whole thing a much like grounded house beat. So we use these really flat claps to bring in a bit more metronomic bass to the whole thing. And then turned the OP-1 drums into sort of like the upper percussion. And made them wide because when you make things wide, they tend to feel less like the main event and less like the thing that's holding down the backbone of the track, like vocals and stuff like that. So, big wide drums. And the idea with the main drums was just to be as flat as possible, especially during these like glitchy sections. Very, very simple drums. Ooh. Thank you, bass. What a great segue. The original bass is this sort of subby thing here. Shout out to my subs. Because this type of house likes a good sub bass. And then during the chorus, we get this buzz. But that wasn't enough. That was not enough for Jeremy. He decided he wanted a groovier house bass. So he started dropping instances of a Massive X, which is sort of the sequel to a Massive by Native Instruments. Very cool wavetable synth. Started dropping them into various sections to give us a bit more classic house bass. Mostly during the chorus, but also during some of the verses. It's just a very classic sound to this particular type of music, and it was important to make a nod to that. The real interesting uses of Massive X came during the harder sections, sort of the like after chorus sections, and just as little filigrees here. So especially this preset, which he used, hold on, what is it called? Bottom bump, subs and bottoms. What is going on here? Such a cool plugin, and also such a cool preset. You can see that he is automating all this stuff here to give us variation. Oops, solo. That reverb on it is especially cool. And here's another instance with down here. So that's all one sound, and then we have a group of other sounds that are adding to it. In Synth Group 1, we'll start at the top for some more fun processing. So in the OP-1 video, Jeremy recorded during these quote-unquote harder sections, these sort of like groups of synth sounds. And they were okay, but what we really found once we started working on this was that we needed a less sustained here and more chop. So we've chopped up all those synths and made them sort of little accents. But the real fun is on this channel. That's the same source material that you just heard, but processed to within an inch of its life. And what we have going on here is Crush doing drive, crush, and a little bit of filtering. So Crush would be like a bit crusher. And then Reactor Molecule, molecular, sorry, I'm a cat, I don't know words, which is a multi-effect super modulation plugin that generally gets some really interesting results. And we followed that up with Glitch 2, a classic multi-effect sequenceable glitch effect. And you can roll the dice on this and it will create sort of like full randomizations of all these different bits here, and also their placement on the grid. So you can see that we're moving through the grid here. So this is doing all of these individual processors when they are on the grid and restarting them depending on whether or not you've elongated the block or made a new block like that. So that's really cool. And it just gives us this really complex, weird sound. We threw the chorus sound into it later, and it's super awesome as well. So that sound right there is this, which is something that we recorded in the OP-1, and Jeremy originally did a lot of processing to it with like 3 auto filters doing band passes and stuff like that, and automating and swirling, and it just was too much. So we kind of brought it back down to basics with saturation, some sidechain compression. Not too much though, because we really want this to be floating and not choked too much by the kick drum. And then we made it wider by putting a delay on it and turning one side of the delay a few milliseconds up. We added some replica for a little bit of stereo delay interest. And then we carved out just the frequencies that we wanted. It almost sounds like a cheesy organ, you know? And then later on, we have this, what was the gated chorus synth, which was this single major 7th chord that we played. Well, Jeremy did. He won't let me near the OP-1. He says I bap it too much. But this really cool chord sequence. And we gave it the same processing as the pads before, because it takes over from where the pads were. You can see that it's chalked right in the middle there during this section. So it just helped it sort of retain some of the same sonic spectrum. We've got these random little chops, mumble chops, and drum things that became sort of the vocal ID for this section. We got all of these samples from OP-1.fun, and we were going to use them in an OPZ live set, but the OPZ is being just an absolute piece of crap right now in terms of like recognizing samples, and we're just going to use them in the OP-1. It just is what it is. What are you going to do? And we have 2 channels of these little chops. Caribou likes to use, Caribou is the artist that we modeled this track after. He likes to use vocal samples, especially in his new album, while he's singing. So like a lot of the times you would use a vocal sample as like a hook when the artist isn't singing, but he just stacks them right on top of each other. So that's what we did in the chorus. We have this little chop thing going on here. And that's just going with the vocals. So that's what's going on there. Remember how I talked about the ducking delay earlier? We're using that on this I Want to Settle Down sample. Let's take a look. See how the delay comes in after the vocal finishes? You can see the reduction here. It's ducking under the main signal. Do you know how delicious ducks are? I love duck. Duck food. These are little samples, really not a lot going on here. This was the sort of like right before the chorus lift. We're using clip automation to do a little tempo, a little transpose drop there to make it sound almost like a record stop. And then we just sort of doubled these pads. It's the same sample, but this one's using a bandpass filter and is transposed up an octave, and this one is not. Cat burp. And that's because on its own, as a lift, this wasn't enough on its own. So we doubled it and increased its sort of high frequency presence in order to make it work better. And then over here, we just have this sustained pad, which works as an interest in the second chorus. We have a little instance of the gated chorus synth up here. In the OP-1 track, we actually sort of recorded almost like a third section to the song, or fourth section of the song, a whole new section of the song to outro, and it didn't really work that well. Don't like it when Jeremy decides to like mash like 5 songs together and call it a song. And we had already done a lot of mashing in this song because we were using all of that sort of like complextro bass stuff in that one section, and we have a chorus, then we have a dropout for the verses. So we decided to just sort of repeat the chorus minus some elements for the outro here. And then we just sort of filter things out by dropping out drums and stuff like that. And that is the Ableton walkthrough. I want to show off a couple more things. This is tonal balance control. It's a plugin from Isotope. And what it does is it creates a curve here, a frequency curve. And you can actually see it here too. So you can see frequencies from 40 to 10,000. And you can set a custom target. So now it's just created a custom curve based on that Caribou track. And what it will do is listen to my track on the master here, and it will look at my frequency bands in relation to my frequency response in relation to the Caribou track and tell me whether or not I'm sort of in the right area. And you can see based on what you're seeing here that I've got more bass than the Caribou track by quite a bit. I'm kind of in that upper area there. And then I've got not that much low mids, which where a lot of musical information generally lives. Little high on the high mids. And I kind of tackled this in mastering, and I'm going to show you how. It's using a reference track as well. So let's open Ozone and I'll show you real quick. Cat. So this is Isotope Ozone. This is what Jeremy uses to master. I just hit this reference button down here and loaded that Caribou track in here. And if I turn this on, it'll play the Caribou track. And what I can do is go into my studio mix here and drop what's called a match EQ on here. It's one of the modules that's available. You can see I've already dropped it, so it's already on there. And then if I go over here, I can capture, turn on the reference, and play. Once this curve sort of like settles down, I sort of have a print of the EQ response, sort of what tonal balance control was doing. And then I can capture part of my mix. So it just captured my track's EQ curve. And what will happen is if I turn this amount up, you're going to see a white correction curve, which tries to make an EQ to make my track sound a bit more like the reference track. And you adjust to taste. Smoothing will turn it into like, you know, one line, or you can be really granular with it. I don't recommend. Don't recommend being that crazy with it. But it's a really nice way to in the mastering process, sort of like fix the problems with your ears or your room in that, you know, sometimes you forget what you're trying to do with your mix. And I don't like when Jeremy A/B's tracks to check things, because it always makes me think that his track doesn't sound as good as the track he's referencing, which is usually true. So this is a nice way, and the tonal balance control are nice ways to bring some of the professionally mixed stuff that you love into your master in order to make it sound a little bit better. So I would normally drop that first or second in the mastering process. And that is all that Kat has to say about this. This has been an Ableton walkthrough of Settle Down, a track by Jeremy, and he will be back to do this stuff when his eyes don't look like he smoked the entire federal stockpile of marijuana, because his allergies are that bad. I hope he's not allergic to me. That would be a real bitch move. I don't really care, but, you know, I hope it's not the case. Anyways, I'm Kat, standing in for Jeremy. This is Red Means Recording. Go pet your cat. Go give your cat treats. Go give your cat wet food. Tell it that you love it. Buy it a Jupiter 8 to sleep on. This has been wonderful. Take care of yourself. We love you. Goodbye.